There's more mice than snakes for a reason, but it's kind of a tradition. I mean, like our teeth, but I don't know, some good chicken. Plants have cells, are living things, yeah. But like fish have very low intellect. Their memories span like 3 seconds.
That's not true. Hi Geoff, nice to meet you. My name is Ed. Yeah, thank you so much. Today I am at the University of Arizona with a sign that says, "Give me your best argument for not being vegan." You've obviously very kindly sat down, which I appreciate immensely. We've had a little chat off camera, so I know you've got some very interesting thoughts, which I'm looking forward to discussing. So let me know what you think about veganism.
Well, I think that if you choose to be a vegan, like I completely respect that. It's a good choice for the planet. Sure. But I think that, I don't know, I think that there is, I am personally not a vegan. I do consume meat. I think that like snakes eat mice, bigger fish eat smaller fish. I think that there's somewhat of a natural order to this world, and there's a delicate balance. Like there's more mice than snakes for a reason, because the snakes eat the mice.
Sure.
And I know that there's bad practices in the animal food industry. Yeah. Like, I'm not gonna say that there isn't. And I think that definitely should be looked into. We should treat animals more humanely all over the globe, but...
Well, we both agree on that, which is nice because we already agree on some things already, which is always super important. So I guess that's two separate things that you've said, so we'll kind of split those things. The first thing we'll talk about is like the natural thing that you'd mentioned. And look, it's quite right to say that there's a lot of hunting in the wild, there's a lot of predator animals that kill prey animals to survive, that's on land, in the ocean. And so that does exist within the wild and is a natural thing. But at the same time, we don't exist in nature anymore. And the problem is when we look at snakes, or we look at lions, or we look at other animals that eat other animals and say, well, they do it, therefore it's okay for us to do it, we're inadvertently saying that we can base our morality on the actions of wild animals. So let's say, for example, that lions also commit infanticide, right? Or they also rape one another, or they kill members of their own species. Are we morally justified to do those things?
Wait, do they actually do those things?
Yes, they do, yeah, it's quite disturbing, isn't it? Many animals do, unfortunately. It's a violent world out there at times. Are we morally justified to do those things just because other animals do those things?
Well, I would say not, okay. But but like raping and killing your own doesn't really serve a purpose for the society, but like for the animal that eats another animal, like it does eat and stay alive and gets the ability to reproduce and continue its species.
Absolutely, which is part of the reason why they do it, right? A lot of times, or at least most of the time, it's a situation of necessity. They have to eat mice, or they have to eat gazelles to survive. But we don't eat animals to survive. When we go to Panda Express here in this university campus, we're not doing it because it's a matter of survival. We are choosing to do it because we want to. So the difference between us and other animals is twofold. Firstly, they do what they do out of necessity. And secondly, they don't have the moral agency that we do. And what I mean by that is they don't have the intelligence to rationalize the morality of what they do. Intellectually, we are significantly more advanced. We can have conversations about big conceptual ideas like we're doing just now. And we also have an understanding of the consequences of what we're doing. We know that when we go into a supermarket and pay for something, there's a supply and demand chain that we're fulfilling by buying that. So intellectually, we're very different. And it's that intellect that provides us with the obligation to engage with these ideas from a moral perspective, which sets us apart. And we have choice as well, We choose to do what we do to animals, not because we have to, because we want to. But what do you think about that?
Well, I think that like our closest ancestor is the chimpanzee, and they eat insects and worms and bugs and things. Our gorillas do too. All the other in the primate family, for the most part, there's a few vegetarian, or there's a few herbivores, I think, but the rest do eat meat to some extent. I mean, like our teeth, like everything we have for a reason because of evolution. Like, I mean, my teeth can bite into both plant-based foods and meat-based foods. Right. I feel as if I have that for a reason, and like, and it's kind of at the same time too. Like it might sound like stupid, but it's kind of a tradition thing. My parents ate meat like their parents before them, and I'm kind of just following in line.
Absolutely. I mean, two things there, obviously. Again, the first thing is about the teeth and kind of like how we are biologically designed. Look, herbivorous animals have canine teeth as well. I'm not saying that we're naturally herbivores. I think we're kind of more opportunistic omnivores. But the fact that we have canines doesn't necessarily mean that we're good at eating animals. You know, case in point, we eat cows, right? If you saw a cow in a field, could you go take a bite out of them with the teeth that you have?
No.
So maybe they're not so good at that. But they are good at like crunching through apples, of course, which is a nice plant-based thing to do. Okay, and the second thing is about tradition, right? Undeniably, these things are traditional. But I guess what we're saying by saying that it's traditional cultural is we're saying that historical precedence morally justifies what we're doing. But is that true, do you think? Does the longevity of an action mean that it's morally justified just because we've done it for such a long time that we consider it to be traditional?
Oh, no, I 100% don't believe that. But at the same time, like, you know, we eat turkey on Thanksgiving and ham on Christmas. Yeah. It's just, you know, it's, and like there's something special to that.
Yeah,
I feel.
Well, I mean, it's part of the celebration of the things that we're partaking in. But does that mean that it's moral just because it's part of the event, or we perceive it to be a part of the event?
I think that it's. I think it's. It is moral if, you know, if. I personally think it's moral, but I mean, you know, I can see how someone would say it isn't moral, yeah. But...
Well, if the rationalization we were just using then is that, well, we eat ham at Christmas, we eat turkey at Thanksgiving, and therefore that's what, you know, and therefore that's moral, is that not contradicting what we just said about traditions and cultures and historical precedents not assigning morality? Is that not a contradiction?
Well, I mean, I think it's a little bit different in this case because, like, you know, people, like, at those meals, like, they connect with other people, like, you know, like, families and communities can get together around these concepts, and, you know, like, I think it has the ability to bring people together.
But does it?
I'm
But does it
not
pig?
saying that can't happen with other foods.
And that was exactly the question I was going to ask.
I am saying that there is a special impact to that tradition, I think.
Yeah, and you've absolutely just looked into the future to see what I was going to say. The question I was going to ask is, does a pig need to be killed for us to come together? And obviously the answer is no. We can celebrate everything that's important about Christmas and the celebrations we partake in without having to kill others to do so. Because if it is about coming together, it is about celebration, it is about communion, and, you know, and the, you know, expression of love with those who we care about most, then no one needs to die for us to do those things. So we can still celebrate everything that's important about these events without killing someone else. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, but at the same time, I think that if, like, I went to, like, a community event that is usually like a picnic with hot dogs, and I said, well, we're all eating salads today, I mean, I don't know if we'd get the same attendance and we'd get the same response out of the community that, like.
But that's not a criticism of being vegan, it's a criticism of the mindset of people within society. Not that I think we should just be serving salads, there's obviously delicious plant-based foods we could share instead. And so if we recognise that tradition and culture things don't you know, assign something as being moral, and we can still celebrate Christmas and you know, and Easter and these events by not killing someone else, then what is the moral justification for what we do to animals? Like, how do we morally justify inherently taking their life and exploiting them for something that we don't need to do?
I guess I would say, again, it's like, well, okay, let's say that every meat company in the world stops making their meat tomorrow. We would all starve to death.
But that's not what the situation is. What we're advocating for is a transition into a plant-based food system, which would mean that there isn't a situation where we cut off everyone's food supplies. It would instead be a transition to ensure that we are constantly, you know, producing enough food over time to make sure everyone gets fed.
The foods from animals do have, like, I know B12 is one of them that is hard to find in vegan-based foods. Like, there are some things that are good for, like, body development that are in. And I know that there is some in vegan options too, but there definitely is some in the natural meat. And so I would think that, I mean, how I justify eating meat is, like, I mean, animals eat other animals. It's just something that's happened. But
we've been through that.
But there, I mean, is there...
Animals rape other animals? Am I allowed to rape, or are you allowed to rape because of that? Right, yeah.
No. But it's... I just feel that there is... That there and, like... when did we start eating cows? Like, when did we?
Well, obviously it depends where we were in the world, where there were wild cattle.
The cow example is very easy to pick apart and make seem not smart, but, like, all the other animals.
Well, why do you say that?
Well, because cows are destroying the planet right now because we have too many of them. So it's a very easy place to start right there.
That's a good place to start, yeah.
And they also there's a lot of foods you make from cows that aren't exactly the healthiest for the body.
Quite right.
But I don't know, some good chicken, like that is. Chickens are like, you can get their eggs. Like they're a very sustainable creature. Like you can eat their eggs. You can, and then when they die, you can eat them. And there's a lot more health benefits to chicken and other poultry than beef.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I'm no advocate for the consumption of animal products from a health perspective. And that's the thing, when we look at foods and we look for isolated nutrients within foods, we can find good things in most things. Dog feces has B12 in it, but dog feces certainly isn't a good thing to eat just because it has B12 in it. And to kind of go back to the point that you were making, yeah, of course there are nutrients in animal products that we can get from animal products that are good for us, but we can get them from plants as well. Even B12. B12 comes in fortified plant foods, or you take just an easy supplement that has that, and so it's easy to do so. On the point that you're making about chickens, chicken is more sustainable than beef, sure, but it's still not as sustainable as consuming just plants. But that point aside, when we think about suffering, the number of chickens who are killed is far, far higher than the number of cattle. And what they endure is worse in many ways than a lot of cattle as well. Their life is just one of the worst that an animal lives. So from an environmental perspective, chicken may be better.
But cattle get they give birth to a calf and it's like ripped apart from them and they kill all of them. You think that the chickens get it? I mean, they're packed in the photos and things I see, but they're.
I mean, it's funny, isn't it, how you've tried to rebut me by saying, hang on a minute, there's cruelty in all animal farming, and there is, and so you've done probably a better job of advocating veganism in that moment than I have. We can talk about that then. I mean, the point of what I'm trying to say is that when we look at chickens, we shouldn't think about chickens as being a sustainable food source. Firstly, because they're not, but secondly, because it's overlooking the fact that we're talking about individuals here, animals who are suffering. And so plants are not only more sustainable, but they reduce suffering far, far more than consuming chickens, which is one of the industries that causes the most suffering to animals, not just in terms of the individual experience of suffering, but the mass scale in which it occurs as well. So from a suffering perspective, why is it moral to consume chickens? Or is it moral to consume chickens?
Well, in a way, I know for a fact that there's more chickens in the state of Iowa than there are people.
Is that pigs, I think? There'll be more chickens as well, most of
There probably is too, but I think that, there's more cows, there's more chickens. And you look in the wild, there's more prey than predators. I think that to an extent there's somewhat of a natural order to that.
So you think that what we do to animals is natural?
Yeah, because there's more of the ones that get eaten and less of the ones that are doing the eating.
Sure, well, I mean, absolutely, but that isn't what that ascribes something as being natural. What we do to animals is not natural. I'm gonna say this point, and then I'm gonna say why it's almost irrelevant. But what we do to animals isn't natural anyway, because farming is a human construct, doesn't exist in nature, and we've selectively bred animals. That's not natural. We kill them in slaughterhouses. That's not natural. Nothing about what we do to animals is natural. But beside the point, is something moral or preferable just because it's natural?
Not everything natural is moral, but at the same time, the food web is a very delicate, as you see when you add the pythons in Florida, they destroy the ecosystem. That's one little change you're adding.
Yeah.
I think that these large scale changes and somewhat we're naturally meant to be omnivores, and that large scale changes within one species can affect a whole ecosystem.
That would be true if what we're discussing is something that exists in an ecosystem.
We consume wild. Now I'm allergic to fish. I don't even eat them, but we consume wild fish, that's fresh caught off the end. The fish populations are dwindling, so that was kind of a bad example. But
yes, they are.
Yeah,
right.
That was a bad example.
Well, but even let's.
I was trying to think of something that's more natural that humans eat, that there's less of it, or that there's an eatable number of it for us and other species that is.
But even if that did exist, it wouldn't mean that it's moral for us to do so, because something isn't moral based on there being more prey than there are predators. So just because there are vastly more animals that we farm than there are humans doesn't mean that what we do is inherently moral as a consequence of that. And so I guess the point I was trying to make really is that even if it was the case, it wouldn't be moral, but what we do to animals has nothing to do with ecosystems. As you quite are well aware from what you've said already, it causes huge ecological damage. So it destroys ecosystems through the habitat loss, deforestation, destruction of the oceans from fishing. So actually what we're doing is contradicting the very thing that you say is important. But that point aside, what we're doing isn't necessary, and as a consequence isn't justified, because it is something that we're doing by choice that's causing more suffering than we need to.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why do you think it's moral to eat plants? Plants have cells, are living things.
Yeah.
They contribute to this world. Why is it moral to eat plants and not animals then?
Because they have the capacity to experience less than animals. They have the capacity to feel pain and suffering less than animals. Like our cells in our body, bacteria and viruses are alive, but they're not deserving of moral worth. That means that we shouldn't take antibiotics to kill bacteria that's going to harm us. And so with plants, sure, they're alive, but when we look at intellect and sentience, they are lower than other animals, which means that by consuming them, we're contributing to less suffering overall than if we consumed other animals.
But fish have very low intellect. Their memories span 3 seconds.
That's not true. That's a myth. But even if it was true, they still have the capacity to experience.
They're not very smart, though. Even if the 3-second memory thing is,
Yeah.
they're one of the dumber animals.
Well, the thing is, by saying fish, we're grouping thousands of different species into one, and we make them an abstraction. And what I mean by that is we're grouping them as all being the same. When there's a variety of different species with a variety of different intellects, and so many fish will be more intelligent than, say, many land animals. But that point aside, even if fish, let's say they were intellectually lower than other animals, that doesn't mean that they are still moral to consume, especially when we can consume plants who, again, intellectually are lower than fish. So when we look at this kind of moral scale of consumption, and we think about all the animals at the top, when we come down this level of kind of this moral gradient, at the bottom are plants, and we have to eat. So morally we choose the beings who are capable of suffering the least, which is what leads us to veganism. Do you agree with that?
That is a very smart statement.
Thank you.
I will not argue that.
Oh, well, I appreciate that very much, Geoff. And I don't want to keep you forever, but I'm interested just to kind of talk about factory farming, because you're against that, and it's something that we agree on, and it's always good to talk about things that we agree on. So why are you against factory farming?
It's going to lead to the downfall of the planet because we're creating antibiotic-resistant diseases because of it. On top of that, yeah, it's you see the photos. It's brutal. Babies are ripped away. They just say, "Oh, this is no use." They kill it. And the living quarters are it's horrible. It does make you want to go vegan, to see those photos. I will not lie.
Yeah.
The thought enters your head.
Yeah. I mean, it's a common thing for people to see and be like, wow, this is awful. And it's great that you recognise that it's awful. And some of the things that you've described, whilst they are in factory farming, aren't only in factory farming. Separation of babies in the dairy industry occurs in organic farms. The killing of baby male chicks in the egg industry happens for organic farms as well. And so a lot of the things that we are concerned about in factory farming don't just exist in factory farming. But just to kind of clarify with the point you were making, is factory farming wrong because it causes suffering to animals?
Yes. Yes. But there are more reasons why it's wrong than just that, I think.
That. Yeah, I mean, obviously ecological damage, antibiotic resistance is going to be such a huge problem in the future, and it's so silly that we're squandering the miracle of modern medicine on farming animals. It's
pigs that we aren't even going to eat.
Outrageous. So scandalous, a huge problem. But if we recognise that factory farming is wrong because it causes animal suffering, is the consequence of that the recognition that the reduction of animal suffering is preferable?
Oh yes, the reduction of animal suffering is preferable. I think that if meat eating should be done, it should be done in the most humane way possible. There should be less family separations in cows. I'm not sure. Someone was telling me one time about how they got this special meat from the grocery store that has a sticker on it that says they killed the cow in a humane way, and they could be lying about that.
Yeah,
but
probably so.
Hey, it's there.
It is.
It's something.
Those stickers exist to sell the product to us, though, don't they? And so they're marketing labels.
I'd love to see what their humane way of killing that cow was. But
Well, let's put it into... Yeah, I mean, we can imagine what it would be, right? Let's put it into these terms, then. What's interesting about the phrasing you used is as humane as possible, which means that there's almost an insinuation there that it's not objectively humane. Instead, all we can do is make it as humane as possible. But what's more humane? To unnecessarily kill an animal or to not do so?
to not do so.
So with the choices that we have, if we want to be as humane as possible, where does that lead us?
To not kill the animal.
And in terms of food choices, what does that mean?
Plants.
And that's exactly how I came to veganism. If I want to reduce animal suffering, I recognise it's morally preferable. And then I recognise that out of the choices I have, veganism is the fullest reduction of suffering that can occur. Because even though there may be systems of farming that are better than factory farming, those systems still contribute to more ecological damage and animal suffering than plant-based farming. Then by my own values and my own concerns around the state of the world, then I'm already in alignment with being vegan. Do you agree with the fact that your morals and values are already in alignment with veganism?
I don't know. It's something that I have thought about, but I don't know. I justified it with that animal thing for a very long time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what about from this point onwards? Can you use that to justify it now?
Well, I'd have to I'd have to look into some big changes. It would probably be a slow transition if I did switch, but yeah.
And I guess with that in mind then, veganism is something that you would definitely be interested in going for.
Yeah,
then.
it's definitely something I'm interested in finding out more information on.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that. What I would absolutely love to do with you, Geoff, because I know that we've been speaking for a while and you've been very kind to give me your time today. What I would love to do is give you some resources to maybe help you be able to make that change. And one thing I always say to people is, reducing, it seems like a good thing to do because it is reducing the harm that we cause, and so it seems like a good step or like a compromise. But the thing to remember is if something's wrong, it's wrong even if we only do it once, let alone if we do it 100 times. And so if we can live in a way that avoids consuming animal products, then morally we should live in a way that avoids animal products, not just simply reduces it. So what I say is just try veganism, give it a go. If you mess up a couple of times, that's okay. Sometimes that happens at the beginning, but just keep going day by day, and just commit to making your meal plant-based and then your next meal after that plant-based, and just see how you get on. So what I'd love to do is give you some resources. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Thanks, Geoff. I appreciate your time today.
Nice meeting you.
Nice to meet you too. Have you got a pen or a phone, something I can write down some on notes or something?
Yeah.
Amazing.